seated. God of mercy, shape us through your grace to know our power, calling, faith. Life is inherently messy. I've experienced firsthand. Every morning I start with the best intentions. Laverne and I go for a walk, have coffee, review our calendar, and envision a productive day ahead. It's wonderful to be retired. But then reality sets in. A phone call disrupts my plans. A text demands immediate response. Something breaks. Someone needs help. A conversation didn't go as I expected it would. And sometimes the biggest mess isn't external, it's within me. Worries compete for my attention. Old disappointments resurface, and faith fluctuates from being easy to challenging. My life isn't neat, orderly, or predictable. And that's why I love this parable. Jesus doesn't tell us how the world ought to be. He tells us how the world is. A farmer scattered seeds. Some lands on the path. Some lands on rocky ground. Some among the thorns. Some on good soil. Some grows. Some doesn't. Some flourishes beyond anyone's expectations. There's something wonderfully honest about that. Jesus isn't surprised by distracted people, shallow faith, or anxious hearts. He simply describes the world he came to save. Most of us, however, immediately make this parable about ourselves. We ask, which soil am I? Am I the hard path, the rocky ground, surrounded by thorns? What do I need to do to become the good soil? Now, those are fair questions, but let's look at something else first. Let's look at the sower. The only thing I know about sowing is throwing grass seed on my lawn. And even I know that you're not supposed to throw it on the driveway. You throw it where it has the best chance to grow. But this sower throws seeds everywhere. On the path, on the rocks, among the thorns. If you were trying to maximize your harvest, this would be terrible farming. But it isn't really about farming. It's about grace. God is extravagant. God is generous. God refuses to ration mercy. Before there is good soil, there's a good sower. Before there is fruit, there is grace. God keeps sowing the word of the kingdom into every corner of the world and every corner of our lives. The story begins not with our worthiness, but with God's generosity. God is speaking on the path, on the rocks, in the thorn, and in the good soil. But you know, perhaps there aren't 4 different kinds of people. Perhaps they are all different parts of the same life. There are places where disappointment hardens our hearts until nothing seems to be able to get in. At the same time, there are places where faith is growing, but it's not set down deep roots. There are worries, grief, ambition, and fear that threaten to choke out our joy. And there are also places where the seed is quietly bearing fruit beyond anything we imagined. Most of us are not one kind of soil. We are an entire field. Some parts need tending. Some parts are struggling. Some parts are flourishing. Yet the generous sower keeps scattering seed over every inch of the field, trusting that grace can bring life wherever it falls. Isn't that simply how life is? Matthew tells a story after Jesus has experienced both tremendous success and growing rejection. Some welcome him with joy. Others dismiss him. Religious leaders oppose him. Crowds drifted away. The question hanging over Matthew's gospel is, if Jesus is really the Messiah, why isn't everybody following him? Jesus' answer is remarkably calm. This is how the kingdom grows. Not everyone responds the same way. Not everyone grows at the same pace. Not every season is fruitful. And yet the seed keeps being sowed. Matthew adds one detail that deserves our attention. Jesus says the good soil is the one who hears the word and understands it. Understanding in Matthew is never merely intellectual. Matthew is interested in communities that hear, understand, and embody the love of Jesus. That's what discipleship looks like. If each of us is a field, then the church is God's countryside. Together, we are acres of life being tended by the same loving sower. In one corner, faith is flourishing. In another, grief has hardened the ground. Here are new roots that are reaching deep. There are worries that have grown like thorns. Somewhere else, a long-forgotten seed is beginning to sprout. And that is why we need one another. When my field is dry, yours may remind me that what hope looks like. When the ground feels rocky, someone else's deep roots may help hold you steady. And when thorns begin to crowd out joy, the community gently clears a path for grace to grow again. None of us are an entire harvest by ourselves. Together, under the generous hand of the sower, God is cultivating a harvest that no single field could ever produce alone. That changes how we see each other. Instead of judging the rocky places in someone else's life, we become patient. Instead of giving up on those surrounded by thorns, we trust the persistence of grace. A community shaped by Jesus learns to hear together, understand together, and embody together what the kingdom looks like. It becomes a place where mercy is practiced, forgiveness is offered, burdens are shared, lonely people belong, and strangers become friends. That's the harvest that Jesus is describing. Notice where the parable ends. Not with the birds, not with the rocks, not with the thorns. It ends with abundance, 30-fold, 60-fold, 100-fold. Jesus' final word is not failure, it's harvest. That shouldn't surprise us because the parable quietly points to Jesus himself. Like a seed, he is scattered into the world, rejected, buried, apparently lost. On Good Friday, it looked as though the seed had failed. Yet on Easter morning, God revealed what had happened beneath the surface all along. Life is growing. Resurrection is coming. The harvest has already begun. That is how the world is. Not because suffering disappears or life suddenly becomes neat and orderly, but because God's grace is always deeper than our failures. God's life is always stronger than death. God's kingdom keeps growing in ways we often cannot see. So perhaps our prayer this week is not, Lord, make me perfect soil. Perhaps our prayer is simpler and more hopeful. God of mercy, shape us through your grace to know our power, calling, faith. Shape us into people who hear your word. Shape us into a community that understands your kingdom. Shape us into disciples who embody your love. For the world is messy, but thanks be to God, the sower is generous, the seed is alive, and the harvest is already beginning. Amen.